There's a restaurant she ate at. Yeah. That's pretty good. And then Jimmy's Beach Grill, or the other one?
Yeah.
That's probably, but they only make nice. Now, what are they doing with the Sunday? Our turns will be this. Things that are on documents, like back and results. No, well, yeah. Oh. It's. I love saying that. Morning, everyone. It's 9:30 and we're about to commence the planning board regular meeting of April 13th. I would remind everybody, please silence their cell phones. Ms. Gaskins, would you please call the roll?
Member Powell,
Present.
Member Chinatsky,
Present.
Member Brown isn't present. Member DeMoss is not present. Member Adwar is not present. Vice Chairperson Mendelson,
Present.
Chairperson Goldenberg,
I'm here.
and Town Attorney Rubin.
Present.
And
And
we-
Town Planner Allen is present.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
All right. Let's please all rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's going to be a change in the agenda to accommodate the applicants. We're moving 8A to unfinished business to below under new business so that we can expedite the applicants. All right, Ms. Gaskins, would you swear in the public?
We need a motion to approve the agenda
Oh,
as
I'm
amended.
sorry. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Gaskins. Now, would you please swear in the public?
Speaking, you stand and raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments. Are there any public comments? And would you please come to the podium and identify yourself? And they're limited to 5 minutes.
Maggie Chapelier, 1015 Bel Air Drive. I saw the plans, the schematics, and I would love to see something like that on our street. This family's been held up for quite some time in getting their plans approved, and any improvements to Bel Air Drive is an asset to the value of our homes, plus the fact of the flooding issues that will be resolved in the driveways when people renovate. So we should all be happy that people are doing renovations and trying to fix their properties on Bel Air Drive and all the other streets in Highland Beach.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, let's move on. Approval of minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of March 9th, 2023?
Okay, I have a question about the minutes and because I need a clarification.
Go ahead.
I looked at the C proposed amendment to the town code of ordinances to incorporate sea turtle protection lighting standards. I read what was in the minutes and I did listen to most of the discussion online on the recording. It seemed to me that what and maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me that from listening to it, what was approved by this committee was something that was going to, something new that was going to take effect, and so that people had to change their lights, and it was going to affect everybody, whether there were existing lights or new lights. And I don't see that in these minutes. I see, sort of a thing about the effects on turtle nesting and hatchlings of lights. And then Town Planner Allen suggested that the information provided is based on the state. And then I see move to approve the proposed ordinance as presented. But nowhere in these minutes is the proposed ordinance that is being approved, like summarized in the minutes. Could somebody speak to that?
Ms. Allen, could you speak to that?
It's actually
or-
the
Town
town
clerk,
clerk
we-
that prepares the minutes.
The minutes are a brief summary, but if you would like for us to amend the minutes, we can amend them and bring them back to the board at the next meeting.
Okay, so let me ask Town Planner Allen, so because I don't see the proposed, which is my comment, which can be corrected by putting the proposed ordinance in here, was what was approved, can you just briefly tell me, because I saw it a month ago, what the ordinance said?
The ordinance was many pages. Let me see if I have it in my
Yeah,
packet. I
okay.
didn't bring typically the previous meeting
Yeah,
packet.
sorry.
See if I have it. No, I don't have the packet with me. Basically, it was, new sea turtle regulations. If you recall, we only have 2 sentences in the code right now that reference sea turtles. One is in chapter 30 and one is in chapter 4. So obviously the ordinance that you all reviewed and made a recommendation to approve is more comprehensive. We're looking at not only the light that comes from residences, but we're looking at the ordinance addresses pool areas, dune walkovers, other accessory uses in whether it's a single family home or a condominium.
Okay,
So
and the ordinance now says that people can only use a certain type of light, was that?
right, that's
Okay.
correct.
A type of light, and it affects everybody who has lights that affect the turtles in existing properties as well as new construction. Is that what the ordinance said?
Well, that is what the ordinance said. However, it had gone to first reading at the town commission, and they had made some comments that, they would like this possibly to be implemented. We're talking more about the existing structures, not new construction. With existing structures, if you are going to change out your lights and you're coming to the town for a permit to switch out lights, then the ordinance would be applicable.
Okay.
It's not just that it's applicable to everyone and everyone's going to come in. No, just like anytime when we change the code, there's a lot of people that are legal non-conforming, right? But the minute, like, let's say seawalls, a lot of people don't have seawalls that are at
Right.
base flood elevation. We're not mandating everyone to change their seawalls
Or
to
the
be in
zoning.
compliance with the code.
Right.
But the minute you come in and want to change your seawall, then you have to comply with the code. It's the same idea with the sea turtle ordinance.
Okay, so my comment of changing the minutes, and I would like the ordinance to be in the minutes because I think it's a little confusing to people.
Especially if we have to look back
But,
at.
right, my comment was, if I'd been here that day, was that I thought it was a little onerous to make everybody who had existing lighting to have to change it for the sea turtles, even though it's important, but the comment that the commission put on that it would be those who are coming for new, that makes it much more palatable. But yes, could you please correct the minutes by putting the body of the ordinance in that was voted on and approved in the minutes?
So you want the body, the ordinance is a
Right.
pretty in-depth
It's-
ordinance. You
it's
want all,
many pages. I
everything?
can't remember,
Okay.
it was 13
Okay,
pages.
well, how about then
I don't call the exact.
like a summary of the ordinance? I mean, it just says motion to approve the proposed ordinance as presented with no summary of what was in the ordinance. It talks all about the turtles, but it doesn't say anything about what was in the ordinance that you're voting on.
We will amend the ordinance, summarize
Yeah.
the discussion and bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much.
All right, how do we want to handle this then? Do we want to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended in future or just we'll table this discussion?
We'll bring it back at the next meeting.
All right, so number 7, we'll table the approval of the minutes and it'll be brought back at the next meeting.
Thanks.
No problem. New business. Development application number 22-0018. Non-Sibi LLC, application by Darian Dunley, Cedar Builders for an amendment to previously approved special exception request number 21-002 to install a 232 square foot wood dock, 2 mooring piles, a 12,000 pound capacity jet ski platform lift, actually should say lift, and a 30,000 pound capacity no profile boat lift for the property located at 4206 Intercoastal Drive. Do any of the board members have an ex parte communication? Moving on, at this time, I now open the public hearing. Town Planner Allen, please present your recommendations.
Hey, good morning. For the record, Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. Lenosa, can we put up the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. And if you could. There we go. Okay, so we're going to start off looking at the aerials. These aerials are in your packet. You could see here is the subject site right here. I do want to advise the board that the proposal for the new dock, the mooring pilings, the boat lifts are on this side across from this canal here. Here's another, excuse me, view of the subject site. The previous one was looking northward. This one's looking southward. Again, the area where they're proposing the dock, the boat lifts, and the mooring pilings will be in this area. On page 63 of your packets, I've included a background of this particular property. And one of the items that I reference is a June 10th, 2021 planning board approval that the applicant received for a special exception. On page 63 of your packets, I provided a table which lists the approved structures from this June 10th, 2021 approval and whether they were installed or not. So I'll just go through that table real quick. You can see that a 564 square foot concrete dock was approved on June 10th, 2021 and was indeed installed. A 305 linear foot seawall with cap was installed. A 309.5 linear foot concrete notch was installed. Now, the 3 items that were approved in 2021 that were not installed are a 140 square foot dock, a 3,000 pound capacity jet ski lift, and a 33,000 pound capacity boat lift. Now, that said, the applicant is amending their previously approved special exception approval, and we'll move on to the next slides and we'll talk about what they're proposing. This is their existing conditions. Again, to show you, this is where the new or amended special exception request is going to, where these structures will be placed. And here we have the proposed. So again, what the applicant is proposing, they're proposing a 232 square foot wood dock, which is located right here. 2 mooring pilings, one is right here and the other one is right there. A 12,000 pound capacity, 204 square foot jet ski platform lift, which is right here. You could see there's going to be 2 lifts, 2 jet skis placed there, and a 30,000 pound capacity, 731 square foot no profile lift right here. These next few slides provide some cross sections of some of these new structures. You could see here, this is the top one is the existing, and here you are shown the proposed wood dock. The next cross section shows the proposed jet ski lift. Now, I do want to reference here, on page 63 of your packets, in the staff report, I do talk about that given the design of these lifts, the applicant has superimposed a jet ski on this page, and on this page, the actual boat that will go on the no profile lift. And these are really for illustrative purposes. This is really to demonstrate they're in compliance with the definition of boat lift, which is provided, again, on page 63 of your packets. The applicant has indicated that the property owner has not purchased the jet ski or boat, I should say, and note that the code does not require the applicant to purchase such vessels for a special exception consideration. Here you have a detail of the mooring pilings here. This is on page 9 of your packets, page 9 of the plan set. Now, the plan sets, just to make sure everyone's clear, these are the 11 by 17 sheets. These are located after page 125 in your packets. This is what is before the board today for approval. You'll see some 8.5 by 11 plan sheets. Those are the plan sheets, right, that correspond to the FDEP and Army Corps. Sometimes they look a little bit different. Sometimes we ask for a little more information. Okay. I also wanted to point out, which I forgot to do, on the proposed conditions. And let me go back to that in a moment. For a moment. You could see here that the applicant is consistent with the 25-foot side setback. Right here is the 25 feet. And obviously they've got a lot of more than 25 feet on this side. The applicant has received both FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and Army Corps engineer approvals. I've gone ahead and provided those file numbers in your packet on page 63. Section 30-68H of the town code provides certain criteria for docks, freestanding pilings and boat lifts. And I'll read those standards. The mooring facilities will not create a hazardous interference with navigation, endanger life or property, or deny the adjacent property owners or public reasonable visual access to the public waterway. Installation of such mooring facilities shall not infringe upon standard navigational practices that are or may be used by abutting property owners. And this section of the code also provides that the town can bring in a marine expert to demonstrate that the applicant is actually in compliance with these standards. Now, keep in mind that docks, the freestanding pilings, and the boat lifts, the code reference these as mooring facilities. Okay. Now, on page 64 of your staff memorandum, I do talk about that the request was reviewed by Applied Technology Management. They are a coastal and marine engineering consulting firm. The town does have a professional services agreement with them. And Dr. Michael Jenkins, he is the coastal engineering principal for ATM. He did review the request, and I put some quotes, kind of summarize a little bit of his report. It's several pages, and it starts on page 70. Dr. Jenkins indicates that the proposed request does not pose an unreasonable obstruction to the canal use or a particular concern or restriction to normal use and navigability. Dr. Jenkins also indicates that the request does not represent a particular concern to canal navigability or view. Now, in the code, we do have separate provisions for perpendicular docking. And as I referenced, that the jet ski lift, those jet skis will be perpendicular to the property. So therefore, the perpendicular docking regulations do apply here. And I've called them out again in your staff report. The code does say that proposed perpendicular docking will not or cannot reasonably deny or otherwise limit the ability of abutting or adjacent property owners to construct accessory marine facilities. Proposed perpendicular docking and related accessory marine facilities will not reasonably deny or otherwise limit the normal ability of abutting or adjacent property owners to moor, maneuver, use, or otherwise move a boat. And perpendicular docking will not deny reasonable visual access of abutting property owners to the public waterway. Again, this particular section of the code indicates that we could bring in a marine expert. So Dr. Jenkins did provide specific comments on this particular perpendicular docking. Again, on the bottom of page 64, he indicates that the perpendicular orientation does not pose a particular concern to navigation or view and aligns the structure with the adjacent proposed boat lift. The jet ski platform does not interfere with navigation of other vessels in the canal. The platform structure does not limit the ability of adjacent properties to construct accessory marine facilities, moor or maneuver a vessel, or deny reasonable visual access. Now, section 30-36A of the code does give the planning board the ability to approve with conditions, or deny requests for special exception. Please note that following an approval by the planning board and prior to initiation of construction, the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit from the town, and pursuant to section 30-21G, commencement of construction shall be initiated within 2 years following the date of approval by the planning board. Now, if the planning board should grant approval of the special exception requests, staff does recommend certain conditions of approval, which are provided on page 65. These are based on the plan set that was received by the applicant dated March 2nd, 2023. And those conditions include: the no profile boat lift and jet ski platform lift shall only be utilized to store vessels and not for any other purpose, including but not limiting to walking, gathering, and sitting. And no mooring of any boat or vessel is permitted along any side of either the no profile boat lift or the jet ski platform lift. And I'll be glad to address any questions you might have.
Well, you want to take a drink of water for your dry throat at this
Say.
point?
Have any water, but that's okay.
Yes. Do any board members have questions of Ingrid? Thank you, Ingrid.
Oh, also the applicant's agent is here to address any questions
That's what
as
I was
well.
going
Yeah.
to say.
I
Eileen?
have one question.
Go ahead.
So you feel comfortable, and this is a lot of technical information,
Yes.
but you feel comfortable that with those two conditions that you've proposed, that this is, something that you guys can get behind?
Again, we're really weighing on the ATM's report. They are the marine experts. I think the report speaks for itself. I think the conditions provided, unless the board thinks of some other condition that you may want to place, but I think it sufficiently addresses the reality of what the applicant is proposing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Applicant, you may now make a presentation if you would like. Please come to the podium, provide your name, business, and affiliation with the applicant. Does the applicant wish to make any questions of any kind? Go ahead.
Darren Dunley, Cedar Builders. I'm the general contractor on the property. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, I think Ingrid and everyone
Ingrid did a
has,
good job.
yeah,
Thanks, Ingrid.
and covered just about anything.
Sorry, I forgot to add some of the renderings. These are also provided in your packet. Again, these are for illustrative purposes. As I mentioned, the applicant has indicated the property owner hasn't purchased any vessels, but this will just give you a little bit of perspective. As you see, I had the applicant put that note, but this is sort of the look. We don't know if this will be the actual boat, right? But just for reference purposes. And then there's this one to show the lift for the jet skis.
I do have one question. So am I reading it right that the conditions basically say if we approve this, then there won't be any more boats along the property? Or
The condition reads that you cannot moor, right? You can then add, more boat to
Right.
the lifts, right?
to the lifts, or what about on the side of the
I think
lift?
the condition is pretty clear. It says no mooring of any boat or vessels permitted along any side.
Any side, okay.
Yes,
Right, they could add another, they come back for a special exception to add another dock or another lift if they want some time
right.
in the
They
future,
adopt,
but
correct,
this will basically mean they can't float a boat beside any of them.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? The public meeting hearing is now closed. Can I accept a recommendation or a proposal?
I think we should make a motion to accept it as written and plus with staff's recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Thank you very much. Next is development application number 220019, James Paris and Karen Mueller Paris. Application by Chris Beal, Bealcon Construction LLC for a major modification to an existing building as provided by section 30-39 of the town code for the property, located at 1106 Bel Air Drive. Does any of the board members have an ex parte communication? Hearing none, and now at this time, a public hearing is open. Ms. Allen, please make your additional presentation.
Chairperson Goldberg, before you have
Yes.
Town Planner Allen, then her item, I do have James Paris on Zoom. I just let him in. He will be speaking on this item. He's the property owner. Would you like for me to swear him in?
I
at
would
this
like you to
time?
swear him in.
Mr. Paris, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Would you please raise your right hand? By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Harris, to the meeting. Go ahead,
Okay.
Ingrid,
Thank you.
it's yours.
All right, we're going to go ahead and start with the aerials, just to get some perspective of the property. Oh, you know what, Linelda, I think when you have a Zoom, it doesn't let me change it. We've had this before. Would you be able to change it for me? Yeah. This is, oh, wait. Wait. Oh, you're doing it. Okay. Yeah, gotta go back. Oh. I think that's the first, there might be one before that, I think. Wait, let me just double check. Yeah, there we go. That's the first one. Thank you. You can go to the next one. Okay, so here's the aerial of the site. Looking northward, we can go to the next one. I provided you the next two slides to show you how the property looked in 2021. You could see sort of those arches in the front. And if you go now to the next aerial, again, these are all in your packet. You can go to the next one. Thank you. This is 2023. You could see how those arches are now gone. Now, I did indicate on page 145 of your packets that the property owner did receive a code violation on October 27th of 2022 for exterior work without a permit. I provided the case number as well. So obviously the applicant is here to rectify and get the proper approval. Again, the applicant is requesting a major modification to an existing 2-unit building. Now, according to the Palm Beach County property appraiser, this building was built in 1980. Now, I've provided on page 145 of your packets how the town describes major modifications. It's pretty clear. Any type of change to an exterior facade, any change to the roof line, so on and so forth, that triggers a major modification, and which is why the applicant is before you today. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here's the applicant's proposed plan is on the left and their existing is on the right. I'll just go through this. Lot of changes here. So you can see here, this is the northern exterior of the building, and they're proposing several facade changes, which include the removal of a decorative overhang, removal of certain rounded arches, which you were able to see in that 2021 aerial, and squaring off such openings. Also altering the roof line by adding the 3 crickets. It's hard to see, but they're right here. 1, 2, and 3. They also are adding a new second floor deck at the rear of the property, which is right here, and an additional 300 square feet of air conditioned area, including enclosure of a existing second floor covered balcony at the rear of the property, which is right here. So here's some of the renderings that were proposed by the applicant. You could see, what they are proposing here. There is a note because the applicant has shown in their rendering some changes to the dock. And the note is very clear that the rendering, even though it does show some changes to the dock, the application does not include any changes to the dock. Obviously, if the applicant wants to move forward with changes to the dock, they'll have to come back before the planning board for a special exception approval. This is again for a major modification. So here's the different elevations. Again, these are in your 11 by 17 attachments. Here you have the new front elevation. You can see that squaring off as the applicant indicated in their application. Here's the existing with the arching. Here's the rear, new rear right here. This is the existing rear. This is the new east here. You could see the rear deck on the second floor. Existing east side, this is the new west side, and then the existing west side right below that. Also, you have the first floor where they show some of the additional under air square footage, and as well as on the second floor. This is the applicant's landscape plan. And this is the survey of the property. So I do mention in the staff report, they are proposing some new landscaping. They're also reconfiguring the parking area. They are consistent with the parking requirement for the RML zoning district, which is again, the residential multifamily low density. It's a requirement of 2 parking spaces per unit. This is a 2-unit building. And pursuant to 30-2022, excuse me, the planning board again shall approve with conditions or deny applications for development approval with regards to major modifications. And following an approval by the planning board and prior to initiation of construction, the applicant will be required to obtain the building permit for exterior modifications. And commencement of construction of the approved major modification shall be initiated within 2 years following the approval of the planning board. And again, staff finds that the application is consistent with the zoning code, and the applicant's agent is here to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Any questions from board members? No. I have one. Can we go to A-01, the 11 by 17?
Sure.
On the bottom left, it
Oh, I'm
shows.
sorry, Nelda, you have to go back. Yes.
All right. It shows that there is, I would guess, to the side of the property, there is a boat moored almost on the property line.
There's a what? I'm sorry?
A boat,
Okay.
a vessel.
Oh, you mean the aerial?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can you go to the first plan sheet right there? So let me point it out.
There it
Right?
is.
No,
it's
the
one.
next one. There you go.
There it
Right
is.
here. Yeah, that's looks like the neighbor's boat.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there going to be any issue with that? If we approve that, they have to move that boat. Is that correct for the site setback?
Well, that's a different issue. I don't know if that's a boat lift or a moored boat, right? If it's a moored boat, they can go to the property line. Again, the applicant is not proposing any type of dock changes or anything like that.
All right.
If you're concerned about that, we can have a, code enforcement officer go out there. But again, it's the residential multifamily low density. They don't have a site setback for accessory marine facilities.
All right,
Yeah.
maybe that will change.
Maybe.
Our applicant, would you please identify yourself and any comments?
Yes, I'm architect Shane Ames, 203 Dixie Boulevard, Delray Beach, Florida.
And I'm Chris Beal, Bealcon Engineering and Bealcon Construction. I'm a structural engineer and a general contractor.
Does any board member have any comments or questions? Thank you. Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Can I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve as stated.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we need that's good enough, Ms. Gaskins?
It's a unanimous vote.
Okay,
You're good.
Thank you.
thank you very much. And now we go to unfinished business. A continued discussion of proposed chart changes, amendment concepts to the accessory marine facility known as the AMF. Nicest way to put it, and the seawall regulations of the town code. I refer this item to town planner Allen.
Okay, so we're back at this item.
Yes, we are.
Again, this is an ongoing item for discussion. As I indicated in the memorandum on page 10. Maybe an 8 to 10 month ongoing discussion. The intent is to come up with some sort of consensus, a recommendation to the commission on the various amendment concepts. So based on your last discussion on March 9th, I've basically given an overview of your discussion. You did discuss the amendment concept, which is a maximum height for accessory marine facilities at base flood elevation plus 7 feet. That's what's being proposed. And the board, you had indicated that maybe 7 feet is not high enough. So maybe you want to continue that, not sure. The next item or concept that you discussed was the ladder requirement, which is proposed for every 50 feet of dock. You all discussed that ladders on seawalls and docks are to require them and consider adjustable ladders whereby the length of the ladder needs to be in the water at low mean tide. Now, I want to add that if you recall, somebody on the board had asked me if FDP and Army Corps require ladders. So I reached out to both agencies. I reached out to people who actually provide those approvals, for the boat lifts.
Right.
There's always a name on there. So both Army Corps and FDP indicated to me that they do not have a ladder requirement.
Okay.
So for what it's worth, I wanted to give you that information. And then the last amendment concept you discussed was the 10-foot setbacks for all zoning districts. And then there's a little caveat, if you're less than 100 feet, then the setback is 10% of the width and the setback cannot be less than 5 feet. The board discussion was a 10-foot setback for multifamily zoning districts needs more discussion. And you also referenced possibly considering a setback for the mooring of boats. So feel free to discuss. I'll be happy to address. And we have the PowerPoint from that public input meeting. If there's anything you need me to go back to or any of those concepts, I'll be happy to do that as well.
Any board member?
I just have a question. Are these the only 3 that we're discussing right now or?
Well, those are the 3 that were discussed in March, and you
Right.
could
You can
discuss.
feel free to discuss anything you want.
Everything's on the table. I could put up the actual amendment concept. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, I should be able to move it now that you don't have the Zoom, but it's not letting me. No, if you can. Okay, okay. Yeah, I have the amendment concepts.
Eileen, any questions that you have?
Well, I just
While we're
want,
waiting.
and these, I guess I don't know much about both, but I agree that there should be a limit. I would look to Roger to tell us.
Unfortunately, Roger.
Yeah, he's not here, but this is going on for 8 months, so that would be my comment, that I'd like to know what he thought about 7 feet. On the ladders, it sounds to me like it's reasonable what's here to require a ladder for every 50 feet, because you're saying that the Army Corps and the other one has 0 rules, so it sounds
That's
to me.
what I've been told, yes.
Right, so it sounds to me like, it seems 50 feet of dock.
Yeah, I actually, not to interrupt, I was reading some of the comments and some of them said that a reasonable accommodation would be 100 feet. I guess for health and safety reasons, 50 feet would be a much more reasonable.
Right.
If a kid falls into the water or someone falls in that is not equipped to swim well, then that would be safer. The other question I have, Ingrid, is I would like to open up discussion about the floating docks and then the non-conforming lifts and so forth. I think more and more people will be getting jet skis that have floating docks and so forth. And I think that should be part of the amendment.
Okay.
Anyway, well, I just wanted to, so on the ladders, I think that that I wouldn't get more restrictive, like this board discussion that
In terms of which way?
this require consider adjustable ladders.
No,
And I wouldn't get more restrictive. And on the 10-foot side setback, and how does that differ from the multifamily zoning to the, just single family?
As far as the setbacks
Yeah.
go, right, so right now the code says, and I could go to the concept. So you could see it, how the code reads. Yeah, for right now, single family zoning districts are the only zoning districts that have a setback for accessory marine facilities. Multifamily zoning districts do not.
Okay.
Bear with me, I'll get to the. Okay, here it is. So right here, as I said, single family zoning districts, it's a 25-foot setback currently. For lots that are 50 feet or more, but less than 70 feet, it's 15%. And then for multifamily, you could see it's exempt from all side setbacks. And then both basins have a 25-foot side setback.
So this is proposed, the amendment concept is to put in something for the multifamily,
Right.
which I think is right. And it's less than the single family, right? The setback is less.
Right, so. the
But that's
proposed-
because there's more units or, I mean.
No, it's just because the lot widths are not, so here it is. So for lots less than 100 feet in width, the setback is 10%. However, if the setback the setback can't be less than 5 feet. So depending on the width.
Right.
Yeah.
So my comment to that would be that we should have something for the multifamily where we don't now. And, whether it's this or something else, I mean, this seems pretty reasonable, your concept, but. Anyway, that's what.
We could look at some of the maps. When you look at multifamily. Let's see here. Trying to find some of the maps, but by all means, if the board has any other comments.
I have a couple or at least one while you're looking at it, and I apologize first for, I was not at last meeting, so I didn't benefit from the discussion, but the comment of require ladder for every 50 feet of dock, is that dock and seawall or just dock?
It does say dock. Yeah,
Lee, I think needs to be changed to dock and
Okay.
seawall.
yeah, right, because we have
agree.
plenty of properties that don't
Yeah.
have docks. They just have a seawall.
They don't, or they have a 10-foot dock and
Right.
Ingrid,
seawall.
The objection I'm hearing on campus in Highland Beach is that the location of the ladders and how that location of the ladder could interfere with the boat coming in. And I hear that being debated quite a bit over the last few weeks. Some have said the ladder should be at one end, someone at the side, but when you listen to the boaters, of which I'm not one, but a recipient of the conversation, a debate goes on as when they're pulling their boats in, where that ladder is going to be located. So I've heard more pushback as far as the location of the ladder than the ladder itself. The other situation, and someone who sits out on the weekends on the intercoastal, that the amount of this is a little bit off the path right now, but the amount of jet skis that are on the waters right now has increased dramatically. But in watching the behavior of the jet ski operator, it's really gotten quite dangerous as I've watched them out there. And without some form of policing, I said to myself, this is getting really, really hairy to watch them out there with turns going left and right and how close they're coming to some of the docks right now. So I'm not sure if it's appropriate at this meeting, but. it was-
Yeah, I think that is more of an enforcement issue, but I hear what you're saying. I also think that we need to regulate or make an amendment to control the floating docks and the low docks that accommodate the jet skis, because other than that, I think all the canals and waterways will become like
I agree.
the Old West. And then everybody will just go, oh, I'll just get a jet ski and off we go. So if we can include that, because I think there's, at this point, there's no regulation.
I'm looking
And
for,
no accommodation.
there actually is a regulation. It's
Okay,
section 30-68 H 6. And I
Oh, you're
actually
good.
referenced this at
I
the.
can't
I
believe
know.
you didn't know that.
yeah, off the top of your head, it's just
Yeah,
amazing.
I've learned this
I'm sorry,
this
it was
section.
my
very
fault, I
well.
guess.
She's memorized the code. That's
Almost,
unfair.
not quite memorize it, but I'm very familiar with the section. I actually brought it up at one of the public input meetings because we had a resident who had brought up the topic about floating docks and he was concerned. So I read it verbatim to him. It says floating docks are permitted, subject to conformance with all zoning requirements herein and compliance with all applicable building codes. And I know myself and the town attorney, we've discussed this. They should be complying with the setback if there is one for
We agree,
would be a
that's,
single family. But then remember, there's that other, we have some exemptions that we have an application for, and I always get the terminology wrong, Len. It's the boat lift,
Vessel platform. I
Yeah.
think it's-
right?
oh, is that what we're
Floating-
calling them now?
That's what
Yeah.
the drive-ons are
Yeah.
called.
Yeah.
They're just
Floating
those things that
vessel.
float there and you just drive.
Right, and I think that's what we need to regulate also.
Well,
Or-
again,
We're
Accommodate.
limited by state laws.
Exactly.
What we can do with those.
what we have right now is an application on the building department's webpage for an exemption, right? For these types of vessels.
And they have to come in front of the planning board.
Not before the planning board. No, they don't have to come before the planning board.
Well, I find that a bit of an issue. That's, I mean, everybody that has a lift has to come in front of the planning board. And I think that is the concern that, in all due respect to, you know, the building department, that it could impact a neighbor or create excessive noise, so forth and so on.
But
I think it's
Len just
because
said-
it's not a structure. It's a, right.
Len
It's
just
just
said
floats in
something
the
about
water.
state law.
Yeah, state law preempts us from. There's very few things we can regulate with respect to those the floating
Okay,
vessel
then if
platforms.
You can't do it. You can't do it.
There's a statute.
Right.
It's one. Get used to it because more is coming down the pike. There's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
preemption going on in Tallahassee.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and there's going to be a lot of construction on A1A that
Right.
will not be able to handle.
So if, I understand what you're saying, that these floating things should be similar to the stationary ones, but if the state says you don't have to, then I don't see how we do anything.
Other than to control the site setbacks and so forth.
Well, if the state's just saying you can have them without any rules, then.
We might have some leeway with this. I have to go back and look at it. Well,
Okay.
I'll, before our next meeting, I'll go back.
Yeah,
to
you
the
understand
statute.
where.
I do, I understand
Right.
where you're coming from, because we wrestled. This preemption came out probably 2015, 16. It's been a while, and we wrestled with it at North Palm and came up with something, so I'll round back and. bring
Yeah,
that
I
to
mean,
you.
I enjoyed the jet ski when I was on it, but they are, as Mr. Chudovsky stated, they're getting a little cowboyish out there.
And
And
it
that
isn't-
is an enforcement thing.
Yeah, the
It was
operation is
Enforcement.
all.
It wasn't just the jet skis, but if you see as some of the larger vessels come down the intercoastal and as they make some sizable waves, you can see what happens to these floating docks, if whatever you want to call them. I mean, it really is and as they get closer, they really get up in the air. And I've watched it now over the last few weeks and it's
It can be very dangerous if somebody's on there.
very,
Can I just
Yeah.
make a clarification, because I
Please.
do have the application up, because again,
All right.
sometimes we can mince the wording. So we have that provision that I just read you was for floating docks, okay?
It's just different.
Now, the exemption is for residential floating vessel platform / floating boat lift. That's the exemption,
Okay,
yeah.
A floating dock is treated like any other dock. It just
Right.
rises and falls
Right.
with the
Right.
tide.
Right, so what's a floating,
The
whatever?
vessel platforms just kind of float there and you just drive on.
and
them.
you run the jet ski up.
You just run it right on it. Yeah.
And is that what the state says they can
Yes,
have?
that's what the state is talking about.
Okay. I mean, like. First of all, the state law seems to be controlling, but second of all, can you imagine what would happen if every single person who wanted one of those had to come in front of the planning board? I mean, I think that would just be like over the top regulation.
Well, that's something are discussing.
Yeah, no, but not if state law lets them have it anyway, so.
So just clarity, if state law allows them to have it, that means that they can circumvent things like setback. They can place it wherever they want as long as it's on their.
I believe they don't have to comply with any.
We might be able to regulate setbacks, but that's about it.
Okay, well, that's.
But I'm gonna have to go back and look because
Right.
the people who want them take a very broad interpretation of it, which I think might be
Don't-
more of an interpretation than.
Yeah, people that
So-
want everything take a broader interpretation
Exactly.
of everything,
So,
so.
so for the next meeting, I'll
Thank
be
you.
prepared to address that at length.
And
Is
I
it-
just have one comment or clarifying question about Jason, your comments about the ladder requirements and their location. Would not the requirement be that they just need to have a ladder every 50 feet?
Right,
then
and where
place
they
it
look,
wherever they
right,
want it, As long
exactly,
as they have one every 50 feet.
right.
Yes.
So they could choose wherever they want, the voter could choose where they want to put it, as long as they have one every 50 feet.
Yes, I guess I was referring more in a condominium society, if I want to call it that. As you look at the number of docks that we have, even at the Coronado, if you have ladders at the personal taste of the owner, you'll have ladders all over the different place. So obviously, as an association, they're trying to regulate where those would be, especially if you have 18 docks.
Yeah, well, the same thing at the Regency, but that would be
Managed by
a
the.
condominium decision, not
Correct.
our decision. And the reason wanted adjustable ladders is that there are existing ladders now, and I did have pictures of them, where at extremely low tide, the ladder is way out of the water. And it could really, there's no reason to have a ladder because you can't reach it. That's the reason.
If I can add to that conversation, this is again, one of the slides from the public input meetings. And you could see that Delray Beach has a pretty extensive ladder requirement and I'm sure this is specifically for condominiums. It says here finger piers and docking facilities for 2 or more boats, a minimum 1 ladder for each 50 feet of finger pier length or major fraction. It goes into, and it says 2 finger piers or more are on the same property. There's a minimum 1 ladder for each finger pier. So I think maybe for condos, we could,
I
put
agree.
something, right? And then right below that, it says docks or a combination of docks serving the same property and exceeding 50 feet in aggregate length, a minimum of 1 ladder for each 50 feet of dock length, so on and so on. You come up with something for.
All right, and the other thing is the Bird Beach residents want to continue with their setbacks to 25 feet. And that question is, do we make adjustments for different communities or do we just do a blanket setback?
I would not do different for different communities. That gets into like, everybody will want every regulation to be dependent on what their community wants. And that's anarchy. It's just this. Can you put back up the amended
That's-
concepts again?
Sure.
Anarchy in Highland Beach?
Yeah.
That's,
Just a question again, in that community, do they have any type of whatever community board HOA that regulates anything that happens in that community?
we think they do. There happens to be a representative here.
Sure.
But he is not sworn in at this time.
So anything that they would
He
do
doesn't need to be
from
sworn.
a dock standpoint would have to be approved by that entity
I
prior
think you just
to.
went by.
I don't know if that's true, but I know that the
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Florida
That's it.
has a say over the intercoastal. It's different than when
Sure.
we do canals.
Well, I do know in my community,
Sorry.
which we have,
That's
it has to be
Okay,
approved
you
by
just
our
went by.
HOA.
Association,
the
absolutely.
association In advance, it goes through all the other regulatory agencies, but it has to be approved before it even comes here.
And if you recall, when we've had some boat lifts at condominiums, I always have them submit an HOA approval
Right.
letter that the HOA. It's not a requirement of the code, but I do have them submit that letter.
And so my point being that if they want a requirement of a 25-foot setback, they could include it in their own association
Right,
That's true.
regulations.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
So was there a list of all of them?
Yeah, I did see it.
Me too.
Sorry, there's a lot of slides here. Wanted to be sure everything was presentable if any questions came up. Bear with me, it's here somewhere.
And while you're looking, unless you find it right away, the height of the seawalls. I think we never finalized, at least came to some agreement. If I remember correctly, we talked about the moat concept. If they're too high, it's going to start spilling to another property and so forth.
That's almost there. There it is. These are all the concepts.
Okay,
I'm sorry, seawall height?
Yes,
Okay.
maximum height.
Right, because right now the code reads that it's at base flood elevation or higher. So somebody could come in and do it really high, right? Because the code says or higher. So maybe the board wants to consider maybe base flood elevation plus 1 foot or whatever.
Well, I don't believe anybody on the board here is an expert on oceanography and what's
Okay.
going to happen. I do have the ability to have someone who is an expert if they want to, you feel interestingly enough to have them come testify. So we get some idea what the future holds rather than just listen to Wikipedia or somebody like that.
Keep in mind that when staff was initially discussing these proposed concepts with Mr. Bobby, who initially presented them, he was the previous vice mayor. We did have ATM, Applied Technology, do a report on those draft concepts. I think I had included it in your March packet, that report, just to save some paper. I don't know that I included it in backup for this item today. But I could be sure to add it to the next meeting when you all discuss this again. So you could see what ATM's thoughts were on, you know what? I take that back because this maximum seawall height came after. You can see I identified as an additional concept. That was not a concept that was initially proposed by Mr. Bobby. So I don't know that the engineer, Dr. Jenkins, addressed it in his report. I'll be sure to look at it, but I don't believe he did. That
Eric,
came after, so.
during our new seawall, we're about 18 inches higher than our neighbors. And watching the storm surges over the past year, as they were receiving a lot of water intrusion on their property, we were getting none.
Yeah, but the concern is that if they get a lot of water intrusion, it's going to end up coming to you. And then it's going to be dammed up behind your 18-inch higher seawall. So it's going to be a very slow turtle-like process to get everybody to a higher seawall. But I know that the property we just discussed and we approved, the one on the corner, they have a higher seawall than just, I think, than is actually needed, but it's there. And I overlooked that property, which is right next to David's. They can see that also. I know David's community has the plants there to protect their seawall and to cover that, but that gets pretty high also. And by the way, an aside, I love the design of the year. At this point, I think we've discussed it enough. If there's any other questions, Eileen, go ahead.
So on the memo that we see here, you showed us 3 concepts and the board discussion on them. We've talked about all those. The one that isn't on here that it doesn't seem was talked about, and I don't know why, was the encroachment into the water. Is everybody happy with that? That proposed amendment?
What, the 25?
The 25 feet or 25% of waterway width, whichever is less. I mean, it may just be, you guys thought that was okay the way it is. I mean.
Well, yeah, but there was some discussion, I believe. There was some discussion about whether it was going to be measured from the shortest destination to the property line, because as we noted, some of the property lines are in the water. And example.
Yeah, I could bring you back to that.
Which I think we were pretty, I wouldn't say shocked, but amazed that was the fact. So I think the way it was stated, we have to go back to that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
step by step.
Remember what it was.
So if that was the case, then it could really extend out into a canal because the property line
Yeah, like
was
here,
way past.
right? This was Coronado, right? So their property line is here.
See,
And so if you
that's a
were,
little different though, because it goes into the intercoastal.
right,
So it's controlled in
how
a
would
different
you-
way.
Amend that proposed amendment concept.
We had
Um,
discussed that.
It's not, it was just not on this sheet. but-
Yeah, we had discussed that from the closest, I won't use the
Yeah.
proper language, but the closest to the existing seawall or property.
whichever furthers landward.
Yeah,
something to that
landward.
extent. I do recall that Mr. Bobby was at one of the public input meetings and he had commented that that 25 feet, 25% wasn't necessarily meant for intercoastal properties on the intercoastal.
Right, because that's regulated differently anyway, I believe.
Pardon?
Isn't that regulated differently that the state has control of that?
The state has control or regulation of the canals as well. So again, right now, the code says if the Army Corps regulates your waterway, they could determine how far you encroach. Right? So
They
now,
can supersede whatever we say.
well, we would have to comply with what,
Right.
whatever
Right.
code
Right.
regulation is in the code. But right now, that's what we're doing. That's what our code says.
Right.
So as long as they got Army Corps, and,
Approval.
yeah,
Right.
then that's the encroachment. There's nothing in our code that says anything different.
Okay, so back to what the concept was. Are we saying that we wanted to, our discussion was that we change that to something or add something to it? I mean, I'm just trying to follow along that chart that you had.
Yeah.
I think we had discussed this, as you said, landward, 25 feet from the closest landward position, I believe. The wording might be different, but I think we all are on the same page,
Okay, I mean, it sounds okay to me.
and we're not finalized as of yet. So is there any other further
Okay.
discussion, or should we wrap it for today?
Just say a point of clarity, just so I understand, is it landward? Or is it property line?
Landward, because property line can extend out into the canal. It was shocking, and we were, I think, all surprised that,
I'm just thinking in the case where it perhaps. So we're saying land that you visibly can see, or so land where you visibly can see
And stand up.
versus seawall. For instance, I know in my neighborhood, there's an area where our docks actually are, there is no seawall.
correct,
And we're, far more than 25 feet away from where you can actually see the land, right? Now, it is on the intercoastal and it is compliant with all
Right.
of the regulations of distance from the channel, right? So it's approved by the, I guess, Department of whatever, Defense, whoever does it.
the state.
Yeah.
The
Army
thing-
Corps.
the Army Corps, there you go.
But I'm just
The
thinking,
feds.
in those scenarios, because there are some places where I don't even know, I'm not sure if there are some in Highland Beach or not, but where there is natural. It's a natural shoreline on the intercoastal, there's no seawall. And if you were to propose where you can see land, you could be pretty far away from where you'd have depth, to be able to put anything.
There would be a special exemption. And it's interesting, across from our properties, Boca put in some piers. And actually, which was, I was surprised about, actually.
Mhm.
And I guess they were approved by the,
Yeah, my
Sure.
only point is that if we're gonna enact a amendment concept and we're gonna write the amendment, that it should be easy to follow so that people don't have to come back for special exemptions all the time. Like we have like an opportunity
Mhm.
to make a ordinance
Agreed.
yep,
something that's easy to follow and easy to understand and not subject to a lot of interpretation. And whether you want to make it from their property line that's where, what you can stand on, or their property line that would be in the water, you know, that's depending on, I think obviously if it was on a side canal, you wouldn't want to make it, you'd want to make it from the land. And the intercoastal, from what I saw, how wide it was when I went with Ingrid on the boat, maybe you want to give them a little more room because it's
Do
different.
do we have that slide? Can you find it? If you can,
Was it the,
it was the one where we had the property lines, some of them were,
in the water?
yeah, some
Yeah.
of them were in the water, and
I
actually
just
there were a
passed,
few,
I think it was this way. Yeah,
Eric, is there-
Coronado one.
no, not the Granada one, there was one or two in the canals that you showed that were extended out.
Is
Go
there,
ahead.
is there a timeline for our recommendations?
Not that I'm aware of.
8 more months. she said.
Yeah, you have 8, 10 months. If I recall
Plenty more
correctly,
meetings.
the ones that I noticed, oh wait. You're right. There was some in Bellito where the property line was a little bit in the water, not as
Yeah, it
much
was-
as like on the intracoastal, but
Yeah,
let me see if I could.
and again, the intercoastal is not a major
Yeah.
concern for us because that is controlled by the Corps
Yeah.
mostly.
Wait, there was
Yeah,
a
the line
property line
before.
right there.
Okay.
Go back.
Or even the one
There's a
before.
property line. in the
Yeah, this is the Coronado that I was
But that,
referencing.
on
The
in the
intercoastal.
canals also, we had some that were very similar. They didn't extend out that far,
Right.
but
Wait, can you just go back to that for 1 second?
I'm sorry,
Read-
here's the one I was going to show you in
Oh.
Bellito. Okay, so the seawall
there
here,
it's that's a good
right? The
example.
seawall's within the property line, and on this side,
It's outside.
the property line, right, the seawall's
Right on it.
outside.
Yeah, basically.
So that may trigger some sort of language, as I mentioned earlier, from measured from the property line, the seawall, whichever is further landward. I've seen other municipalities use similar language. Some of them use the bulkhead, whichever is further landward.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, that's a clarification. That would be good. But it should, just go back a couple. I just was
Back?
reading, yeah,
Okay.
or,
This is bad.
yeah, no, the other way.
Forward.
I'm sorry,
No worries.
forward.
But that's another good example.
The one I just passed?
Yeah,
Okay.
where, not to interrupt, but even there, the docks are past the property line. On the left-hand side,
Yeah.
on the bottom left. But that's some of the concerns that we need to address, I believe. Okay, go ahead.
Just
Back
go-
to,
Go to the other way. Another one. Okay, stop. Town code currently allows boat to be moored perpendicular. Okay, current finger pier exceeds 25 foot, however, property line in the water. So,
so they're compliant because that's their property line, the yellow line.
right, but would it comply on your new
Well,
amendment
that's
concept?
something that was brought up at the public input meeting
Right.
to make people aware that if you're going to put a 25-foot or 25% encroachment, keep in mind that you have some people that are on the
Right.
property. So you're saying that from that yellow line, they could go out. They
Right.
give, obviously, I mean, I don't know if that ever
Right, so
happened,
that
but
has to be
you have to be careful with the
clarified,
language,
right.
exactly.
The language has to be.
Right, and that's on the.
And
intercoastal.
standardized
Right.
somehow.
So maybe here in this case, but again, there's just so much nuance.
I
In this case, it would be from the seawall, right? Or maybe the bulkhead.
understand. Or
It's just, there's a lot of
landward,
nuance, which
yeah.
is why I was showing all those slides to show the nuance.
Yeah, we saw the nuances when we were out on the puppy
Yes.
boat, so to speak.
Um,
And we were actually kind of shocked that there were so many differences in one canal. That's,
I've been here a little over 3.5 years, close to 3.5 years. I've not had anybody complain about the encroachment scenario. So,
you mean into the waterway?
yeah,
Setbacks, I've had a number of complaints about setbacks.
setbacks. Okay. If you recall, we had that one property on Bel Air. If you remember, it was a boat lift. It was right towards the end of the canal. Actually, I think I have
That's all right.
yes, in the corner.
Yes.
That one was a little contentious because if you recall, I think it was this one here.
It was in the,
I
yeah.
think it was this one right here.
It was.
Yeah,
he
so if you
couldn't-
remember,
he
they,
couldn't access,
right, they had a boat lift permit from 2012, which was, I think, supposed to be like maybe 20 feet from the side setback. And then they ended up putting it 40 feet because they changed it on the electrical paperwork for their permit, which is, we wouldn't do that now, right? They should have come back to the board to amend their special exception for a new location. I mean, that's a big difference, 10 feet versus, or 20 feet versus 40 feet.
Right.
So in that instance, right, this is right here.
It affected the
Right.
neighbors and.
We thought it might, which is why we brought in the marine expert. And the marine expert said there wasn't an issue for navigability. And that's what I was always talking about in the public input meetings. I always gave a no action option. And one of the no action options is that we have the marine expert. If there is a contentious scenario, something that,
And I think they
maybe an
eventually,
impact to
I think they
navigability.
eventually worked it out. And the
Um,
neighbors,
Well, no,
We
if you recall,
tried.
the neighbor came to the meeting and
I-
was opposed to it, but based on the marine expert's report indicating that it wasn't an impact to the visual of the abutting neighbor, no impact to the navigability, you all, did approve it. And that's how we've been dealing with things and just something
All right,
to be mindful of.
is your throat dry enough? Can we
Yeah.
end this conversation at this point?
Just to recap, I know that Mr. Rubin is going to do a little bit research on those floating platforms. And I mean, there's a lot of notes here that I've taken.
I know, almost too many.
Yeah. Well, I'll just have to go through it unless you can
Now
maybe
let's.
summarize
Well,
anything.
no, I think it's still, everything is pretty much up in the air. I think
On
we
the table.
talked about the ladders.
Yeah,
The ladders we're pretty much all in agreement with, and I think it's a safety and life issue.
okay.
Site setback, I think really we wanted to talk about the multifamily. And making sure that there was a setback, so,
Having something.
right,
And the maximum height, like everyone thinks we should have a maximum height, but I still think we haven't decided.
Seawall.
that's
How
right.
high it should be.
I think for us to say arbitrarily without the expert again coming in. And talking about what he perceives the future to be and what we need to have.
I'm sorry, what was that on that last?
About having, we're
high?
we're novices to how high and
Oh,
what
that's
the
seawall
ocean's gonna
height,
happen
okay.
here.
And then maybe what I'll do for your conversation next time for the setbacks and multifamily, maybe I'll bring back those slides because again, some of the multifamily, they have a very small lot width. And so now that you're going to give them a setback, I want to be sure that the board is aware of
Right, but we did talk about a 10% or 15%.
Yeah,
10% and minimum would be 5 feet,
5 feet.
but even with 5 feet on both sides, some of those properties are very narrow. And I'll bring those slides back just to refresh.
Yeah,
the
but I
memory.
would think at that point, it would have to come back for an exception because it could interfere with, even if it's a multifamily, the neighbors having, access to their spaces. And
then what we just discussed about the land word and
yes,
that thing.
Okay, that'll come back. And then, of course, you can address other concepts at the next
I
discussion.
think we have enough right now.
Okay,
Well, thank you, Ms. Allen. Can we close this discussion at this point? And then let's do some announcements. The April 18th commission meeting has been canceled, from what I understand. April 26th at 11:30 a.m. is Financial Advisory Board regular meeting. May 2nd at 1:30 p.m. is the Town Commission meeting. May I have someone want to make a motion to
Motion
adjourn? Second,
Second.
all approved, say aye.
Aye.
And the public meeting is closed at, let's call it 10:42, 10:43. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
know about your comment with the jet ski, because they had that marine patrol vessel. I'll just let them know that you brought it up and just wants to learn to that.
You're working on that, by the way.
Yeah.
Jason?
Yes.